In March of 2018, NoClip released a two-part documentary series about the history of digital extremes and the development of Warframe, a free-to-play sci-fi PvE game that was turned down by all the biggest free-to-play publishers on the planet, a game that ultimately saved the Canadian studio. Warframe is now over 11 years old and has been the poster child for free-to-play games with engaged communities and AAA production values for that entire time. Practically every free-to-play shooter made in the past decade has looked to Warframe for lessons learned. But it's been 7 years since we produced that documentary and a lot has changed. Dozens of new gameplay features have been added. Live services as a concept has appeared and matured, and the player base has also grown up. So how is a game like Warframe still keeping the lights on at Digital Extremes? And how does their new project Soulframe fit into their future plans? When we filmed the documentary, Rebb Ford was Director of Community and Live Ops. Today she is Creative Director of the entire Warframe project. So who better to talk about all that has happened and what the future holds for the Tenno? But before we do, quick aside. Rebb and her partner in crime Megan Everett, who now does Rebb's old gig, are two of the most stylish folks in game dev. Both are instant Instagram follows if you like cosplay, fashion, and home decor. So it was perhaps no surprise when Rebb warned me that we may have to stop mid-podcast so she could accept delivery of a new couch. I'm disappointed. Your sofa arrived already, so we don't get to have the sort of the break in the middle of the podcast, Rebb.
Yeah, my sofa is here, and they actually broke some stuff, but nothing that a good old patch of drywall can't fix. But the post-flood renovation survives.
Oh no, wait, did you tell me about this flood?
Oh God. On the one hand, my foundation got all cracked and broken and bruised and it was flooding, and then the pipe burst in the other side of the basement. So I went downstairs one morning and it was a double-edged sword of flooding. So I just went, well, okay, I guess I need to fix that. So now I'm refurniturizing with a nice sofa that no one will know.
Oh my God. For me. Is refurniturizing a word? It's a terrific word if it is.
It's a state of mind more than anything.
Okay. Just tell me about the new couch. Is it a big pair of lips? Is it a...
It's not. It's actually... This is actually really embarrassing. How much do you want to know about this project? It's really quite embarrassing.
Well, you like I'm guessing that you like home decor and stuff like that. You're a very visual person. So
I do.
With your, cosplaying and just in general being the sort of mother figure god of a massive space universe, you know?
One must turn their home into where they want to spend their time working. So I actually gave my cousin, who's an interior designer, she's starting that, and I gave her a picture of Emmett Selk from Final Fantasy XIV Online, and I was like, can you base a basement around this man?
Oh my
and she
God.
did. So it's really embarrassing, but the entire basement is a tasteful interpretation of Emmett Selk from Final Fantasy, from the wallpaper, which is like a red and gold, sort of a jacquard look with, it's really embarrassing, but I'm gonna love it.
So like color, but also like tone and vibe.
Everything. I mean, I can send you a screenshot of her mock-up.
Please. I'll put it in the description for the podcast so everyone else can enjoy it.
Yeah, my cousin's business will take off with the gamers, but it's I finally have the time to do this, but it's a beautiful sofa to really punctuate the tone of a Final Fantasy XIV themed room.
We're here to talk about Warframe. Well, I mean, we're here to talk about lots of things, Rebecca, but the fun thing about going back to a game like Warframe is that it's like my daughter started watching Pokemon recently, and it's like the new series of it. And now instead of 150 or whatever, there's like over 1,000 Pokemon, and there's all these new fucking things you can do with the Pokemon, and there's all these different types of there's like a whole thing you can do that has nothing to do with battling. There's all this sort of stuff. And then going back to Warframe is a sort of a similar vibe, because you're just like, is this it feels like a sequel. I'm not sure if it's Warframe 2 or 3 at this stage, but like everything about the game seems different. Like I would say 10% of it, like obviously some of the frames and the art style and stuff feel at home to me, but as somebody who hadn't played it since around when we did the doc, I was like, Jesus Christ, like you guys never stop. I guess that's the life of a free to play game, is you have to just keep on throwing cool stuff in there, get the people coming back, right?
Yeah, we live and die by our updates, that's for sure. So the direction those updates take, it's either core Warframe or my God, it's something else completely different. And yeah, since we did our big doc, which has definitely changed the trajectory of like our team and our on, like it's crazy how many people join the company and like, oh, I saw you in the no clip doc. And I'm like,
My name is Rebb Ford, and my current job title is Live Ops and Community Director.
Cool. Current job title. What was your first job title?
Community, no, I think it was just intern.
Okay.
So that actually is true. Intern would have been the first one.
But yeah, it's we are going into our 11th year. We're about to celebrate our 11th anniversary next week, I think, or the week after. March 2024 is 11th year anniversary for those listening at times of their leisure. And yeah, it's crazy. We are absolutely doing it again this year too. We are staging ourselves for the 1999 expansion. So that's going to be very different.
So let's talk about some of those updates. There's a lot of them, but like I guess you divvied them up sort of in a way. I know some of them are kind of like, okay, here is some story stuff. Here's a bunch of missions. Here's a bunch of cutscenes. There's a whole, part of the single player progression, get you to go over them all over the map and all that stuff. And then you've done stuff that's like really out there, like open world. Like actually, was it? I think the first open world expansion was just coming out after we did the doc, I think.
The doc was 5 years ago. I think we did our we were just doing our second one, I think, because I'm trying to think of what B-roll you used, and that's like framing everything. But I'm sure the doc was 5 years ago last year, maybe. So maybe
okay.
Maybe it was. But yeah, last year we added a roguelite to Warframe. So that was cool.
Yeah, give us an idea of some of the expansions have got in since then. You don't need to be encyclopedic about it, but
I am though. That's my one cross to bear is I have to know everything. But the general vibe is we try and do one major update a year, something that you would see typically as premium DLC. In our case, we obviously have a very different model, but we try and do one big milestone update a year. Last year, we actually kind of did two because we did our Dwyery update, which was open world plus roguelite plus horses, which every time you think of Warframe, you think of those three things. Flying horses.
Yeah, and that was its own single player thing, that it was a whole new character and everything, yes. Right? You could just go straight into it.
Yes. So that was its own thing. And then it did overlap with the main story depending on what order you played it in. It was super super weird, quirky, and it's its own sort of pocket that does have end game multiplayer once you've finished all the core or single player stuff. And then at the end of the year, last year, so 2023 December, we released our next major cinematic quest for the like mainline story. So that tip of spear story, latest season, and that we're still supporting that this year. Like our next update launches very soon, and it's part 2 of that. And then in the background, we're working on 1999 because we know that's going to be sort of our milestone major update for this year. So we have I think 3 different updates on the go right now, and the other one is currently top secret.
I'm assuming 1999 is you guys adding Unreal Tournament maps to the game finally.
Well, like technically, why not? I mean, we co-created Unreal with Epic, so I haven't done any work we have Unreal weapon skins in the game right now. Like you can use the flak cannon and stuff, but as I haven't put the work in, so to speak, of actually getting Unreal in the game, but it's kind of like, it would work. So let's see.
Let's get Morpheus in, that.
Oh my God.
With the 3 skyscrapers at it. That's in space. That could work.
It kind of works. It's an iconic map.
Yeah. So, what's the cadence like when it comes to players? Because, I mean, it's always hard to tell from the outside, like how many people are playing this game. And there's all these like websites that attempt to scrape data. The ones that I've seen have shown that it's going up, but it does that thing where it goes up and down and up and down. Like the long curve is actually seems like it's going up since the time we did the documentary. But then it's super seasonal, I'm guessing, based on all of these updates.
Yeah, our updates really are if you look at the concurrent user data that is publicly available, you can look at it like the ECG graph, right? Like where's the pulse? And it's not even correlation. You can pinpoint major game events to peaks. So something like TennoCon typically has a peak because we encourage people to rush in game and get a rare item. And then when we release an update on a date, you can see the peaks. And then depending on how much post-story content we have, it'll have that retention, right? That's one of the keywords people love to say, like, oh, retention mechanics, retention metrics. But we're learning a lot as we go. I mean, I've been with this project for over 11 years now, so I've known Warframe through every update we've ever done. But now it's really figuring out what updates to do next. Is that scary thing of if the peaks go lower, like what did we screw up? What did we fuck up? But the measurements and the mindset we're using is really just what is the most exciting thing we can play right now, and how does that feel in Warframe? So for something like 1999, we know exactly how we want it to feel. We're going to put a lot of money into promoting it, a lot of work into developing it.
Warframe 1999 is an update that we are very excited that we took a lot of risks with. All of your support in what we've been trying to do has been very grateful, and we are privileged to be presenting you this update today here at TennoCon. So thank you for coming, for showing up.
In the meantime, we need other stuff because it's going to take at least a year or more to make 1999. So what are we going to do in the meantime? And that's when you start slicing out the things that keep that player base happy, engaged, and interested in what you're doing. So the update that we're releasing very soon is like a small slice of the Warframe universe. And then we're doing another slice of the Warframe universe. So, every 4 months have something. Bring back a clan event. Give people something to do, for God's sake. And that's sort of the perpetual short-term plans, while you're also working on those big yearly swings that are something that get the attention of former Warframe players that anyone really. Like, we don't know. We just know what we want to make.
That sounds like so difficult though, because especially those big ones, because you're basically shooting at a moving target. Like you're going, okay, we're gonna make this thing, but it's gonna make like a year minimum, like probably multiple years to get that stuff produced. And then it also sounds like are you appealing to different subsets of the audience, or can you nail a lot of them with one update or one patch or content update?
Yeah, there's certain ways I try not to apply too much of a statistical model on like who the Warframe player is,
right.
But as someone playing Warframe, you can kind of see the trends of a story content player, a competitive event player, which are, they haven't been fed in a while. So it's kind of like, so what? We're going into our 11th year. We know people love the power fantasy, they love the speed, and they love, certain character interactions. So we just try and build around that with a team that has now become very familiar with each other, which is one of those weird things with like the industry at large. So say if I was working on a game for 6 years and then it ships, and then, you have that 6-year relationship with that team, and then you're never going to work together again.
Right.
The more familiar you become with each other, the quicker you make decisions, which is probably the hardest thing to do effectively in a live service game. Like I've heard horror stories about meetings, about making decisions, about having meetings, and then a month passes and you have no feature for your players. So it's hard. And I'm sympathetic. I'm not braggadocious at all. It's just like love working with people I know how to work with, because then we can do things quickly. And apparently that keeps the game alive. So whew.
It's incredible how what's often talked about is stuff like institutional knowledge, which of course is important too. But what you're talking about is more collaborative familiarity. And it's funny, like we had a similar thing we noticed with the Supergiant folks when we were doing our Hades doc, where like a lot of those folks have worked together for for 4 games or so, and they're just able to get decisions made faster. And also they know they have a rhythm, I guess. They sort of can play to the rhythm once they get going. They're simpatico in that way. And it's, I guess, like for you guys, where does that come from? Obviously you're somewhat geographically protected from other studios. I guess there's big Canadian cities close by, but London is somewhat isolated that way. Is there other stuff going on? Is there like a familial culture within the studio? Is it just a decent place to work with all the, especially, and we haven't even talked about the I guess the Nexon stuff happened as well since we last talked as well, right? You guys,
Tencent.
Sorry.
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
wrong one. God.
Wrong conglomerate, Danny.
Sorry, I'm getting my
You're getting
Asian
your
conglomerates
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah, when that sale happened, it was 2020, I think. So yeah, long since we had talked. And it's such a strange formula to retain people in this economy, retaining your devs versus what are they working on. And I can only tell the story I've lived with the people I've lived it with. And this is kind of I don't know if it's depressing, but I was talking to a student. They were doing a research paper for a university on games, and they asked me like, oh, like when you're done with Warframe, where will you go next for work? And I was like, when this is over, I'm never going into games industry again. Like DE will be my first and last job in this thing. And that's just my personal take, obviously, but the people I've worked with, like so much has gone into surviving together, which certainly gives someone a jump start in a very type of work habits when you've had to survive, which I think a lot of us are going through even right now. But back in 2011, 2012, we were very much survival instincts. You become a certain way as a result of that. You become frugal, decisive, and dependent on one another because it's a shared fate. The individual part of the shared journey, like that we're all finding ourselves in, it is such a peculiar feeling because I came into the industry at a time when, my references were, oh, WoW and League are like two games that'll never go away. And they still haven't gone away, right? Like these games still are huge. League, WoW, all these things. And I remember none of us knew what Warframe was going to be, but now I've become that to someone else, I'm 100%, sure.
100%, yeah.
Like Warframe's still around, like Warframe's an old timer now, and we're over a decade old. And these things are very interesting to look from a like creative or industry trends, patterns, whatever. But from the personal journey, like I was 20 when I started at DE, and now I feel like I'm a different. The game has changed as much as I have. It's the ship of Theseus. Warframe is not the same. Like it may be called Warframe, but the plywood that makes it up has long since deprecated, and it's made of something carbon fiber now. And I feel that way about myself too. I've learned a lot, and the responsibility I have now is, crushing, right? Like it's been 2 years of absolute freedom, but also loyalty to what makes Warframe and being a creative director. No one trains you how to do that. Like I never read a book on it. I don't know what to do. I just know Warframe. So like I am not, it's not a transferable skill? No way.
Right.
Like where am I going to go and be a creative director that isn't Warframe? It's just not going to happen.
In February of 2022, Rebecca was promoted to creative director. The decision was made public at the studio's annual fan fest, TennoCon, by the person who filled the role previously, in fact, since the game's conception, Steve Sinclair. We also interviewed him for the documentary series. He took on the role of CEO at Digital Extremes after the company's founder, Jamie Schmaltz, who, yes, we also interviewed him, retired a few years ago. It's not often in this industry you see a career path that starts at intern and ends at creative director of a decade-spanning multiplayer game. So yeah, we're gonna have to ask her about that. You obviously had a really big change 2 years ago when you came on to take the responsibility of being a creative director. Was that an easy decision to make or an impossible one?
Impossible. I booked a therapy appointment. I talked to my mom. I didn't even get offered it first. So it was very...
Yeah. I probably was supposed to be prepared to have like a more structured speech, but it's...
Why start now? We've only been doing
why
this
be
10
structured
years.
now?
Why start?
Let's do this.
We wanted to share with our community some news about the growth of DE.
The amazing growth.
And the growth of the team. And I guess Warframe has a new leader, and and it's going to be you.
It's a very strange outcome to something that felt inevitable at the same time for the way we operate as a development studio. We're very community focused. Knowledge and respect of the product matters a lot. The fun of Warframe, I played it almost more than anyone else at certain levels of the team, and it was such a strange outcome, really, because as a business that is also a game development studio, we can't rely on Warframe forever. I would like to think we could, and I am working as though that is the case. Like my mindset is this is forever for me, and I want to work on it for 10 more years. Well, like for as long as they'll let me, truly. But we really wanted to try a second game with everything we learned, right? So, like Steve, Jeff, Scott, make a second game. Who's going to run Warframe? And Pablo, who I've mentioned already, he kind of like he didn't think he wanted to do the creative director role just because it's so much more than just game development, and he is a developer tried and true. Whereas the creative director role, like I'm still involved in planning TennoCon and like all like, what are we going to do for the run of show? What's the keynote? Where like there's more to it that just doesn't interest him. Power to him. And it was things that I was already doing. So the decision really just came down to, I just don't know what would happen if it wasn't me. So I just, I think if I ever pulled up my screenshots in regards to the pep talks I had with people like Megan, Pablo, Steve, it just was such a silly outcome because it was, Pablo said, no, what are we going to do? And then they all looked at me and joked and said, well, if only there was someone else that would have been perfect for the role the whole time. And they looked at me like a sitcom, like if only there was someone that knew the game inside and out, was organized. And then I realized that, they're offering me this job and that's how they're offering it. And I was like, give me a week. And then I said yes.
Yeah, they're like, the stones, the sword is in the stone right there, Rebecca. Come on, just pull it out for goodness sake. We're all just...
Honestly, that was that was it. That was the formality of it, was that. So yeah, and then 2 years later, we were trying new things.
What's the toughest part about it? Is it the amount of work? Is it the buck stops with you nature of it? Is it, being a shepherd to, I'm sorry, I don't want to call your developers sheep. That seems particularly crass on my
But that
account,
means they're not sheep. Dude.
No,
come on, that's the Irish in you.
They are probably very cute and
they
hopefully
are.
warm,
They are warm. I think the crushing responsibility of a bad decision being a torrent of failure of the team that I work with is very, I know that if it came down to it, if something was my fault, I will obviously always take responsibility for a bad direction or decision. But with the volatility of the industry, it makes me feel very scared to choose a direction that could put us in an uncomfortable situation as a business. Because I'm not a business person. I am not a business person. So having Warframe be the business that we run, it means that I have to take care of it in a way that isn't necessarily my language. So I'm always afraid of faltering in that regard. And, that's tough, but it's a learnable tolerance for me. So I'm not desperate yet. It's just uncomfortable sometimes. And I'm not an expert in a lot of things either, except Warframe, which is always interesting, walking into I'm trying to think of like a recent example, but I know the game and I know what I like. So, and I saw how Steve did it for so long and Jeff and him. So I learned on the job. I learned a lot. I certainly think at this point I feel qualified, but I didn't at first. And being able to speak the same language when you're giving crits or being able to express, in my head, I know exactly what I want, but how do you tell 3 steps removed artist or sound, like just like being able to speak the language of every department so they can all work together on the same thing.
Do you feel like you can do that? Is that something that you've learned over the past 2 years or the past 11 years?
Both. 11 years in terms of like asking devs why we made a certain change and requesting such changes. And now I am very much supported by an artist who gets it and is the most technically competent art director that I could ever imagine having supporting this vision and journey. And they can turn our conversations into very pragmatic tasks. And it just has that is such a great benefit that you only get with time. I've worked with Carrie, our art director, for the better part of 10 years, 11 years. So I've known him forever. And yeah.
The thing that would freak me out is that any job you do, you learn by making mistakes so that you can find the limits by and often in places you're encouraged to make especially in creative jobs, you're encouraged to find those limits, make those mistakes and learn those lessons. But, when you're in a position of being the sort of the helmsman of the ship, that is if you make a decision, it might actually affect people here and now that aren't yourself. It might be a difficult lesson to learn.
It is. And, we've endured a lot of rocky update releases in my tenure. And there have been times that have been the lowest lows. And I think about what decisions were made to get us there. And I just honestly learn from the mistakes we've already made. It's inevitable that there will be some rocky release that is no doubt the work of myself that we'll have to course correct. We'll have to fix it. But if it's a surprise, that means we already were off on the wrong foot.
As Rebb said, part of the reason that someone needed to take over as creative director on Warframe was because the studio was spinning out their first new title in 11 years.
The younger generation is going to take over Warframe, and the old buggers are going to try to do it again with you at home. Yeah, it's time to see the next story that we're adding to the studio's legacy going forward, I hope. I hope you like it.
This next story was titled Soulframe, and at TennoCon this year, the studio revealed an extended demo of the title, the ways in which it shares DNA with Warframe, and the ways in which it's different. The most immediate difference between the two titles is the setting. Soulframe is the fantasy cousin of sci-fi Warframe. But with a brand new slate to work with, the team at DE have free rein to apply over a decade worth of live services knowledge to this new world. My interview with Rebb was recorded prior to TennoCon this year, but I wanted to know how many development resources were shared between these two games. The Dwyery Paradox, that was the name of the single player one that came out last year, right?
Yeah, the roguelite, yeah.
Was there any development connection between that and Soulframe?
No, but that's highly speculative, which is very kind of one of those things that people think that Dwyery was a test run for Soulframe tech, but it's actually not at all. And
Fine.
that is a fact. The speculation is incorrect. It's completely unrelated.
Yeah, I thought that myself. I hadn't read that on Reddit or anything. It might be the horse.
It's definitely the horse. It's the pace too, right? There's no bullet jumping. It's a guy,
right.
And Soulframe was shown to you as a guy. So it is unrelated.
How is the fan base reacting to Soulframe, right? Because I'm sure there are some Warframe people who are like, hell yeah, let's play this other game by DE. But then there's going to be folks who are like, I mean, pacing-wise, combat-wise, it's a completely different beast. Thematically, obviously, there are some people who just love their sci-fi, and this is going to be something that they're not into, probably. How are you guys sort of positioning it, and how are you seeing it? Like, for instance, when you show Soulframe at TennoCon, are there people who are like, oh, this is cool, and other people who are like, get this fantasy shit off my show. Show me some new frames.
Both. It is I'd say of the insecurities that plague the team, it's how to message Soulframe to Warframe players, because you can live in a Soulframe world and that's fine, but if the Warframe players are the people that have come to know you or know of your work, you want to talk to them first so they feel that the Warframe funnel isn't getting depleted. Warframe isn't being put on maintenance mode. Warframe isn't taking a second seat. We're trying to build two equally two games, and at this point I look at it like, Warhammer Age of Sigmar versus Warhammer 40K, where you have the Warhammer umbrella and you can go fantasy or 40K. So I've been looking a lot into how they do it and what makes that work with people that are just Age of Sigmar fans or like 40K or die. And it seems, I do not know enough about the nuances of that community. I've only dabbled in Age of Sigmar with the tabletop and figures, and I've only played 40K games online. So it's kind of like, in the actual traditional Warhammer stuff, I've only touched Sigmar, but in the spin-off gaming, I've only done 40K, and it all seems to work. I'm probably speaking with complete ignorance on the way the communities look at each other. I don't know, but Games Workshop has a couple tricks up their sleeve with separate but same branding. For us, I'm very excited to have a fantasy game because I'm a sci-fi girl, but I'm also a fantasy girl. We're making two games. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, it's tricky though. I can see the balance of you don't want to if people come to the hot dog conference, you don't want to just start showing them burgers.
And I mean, I'll eat them all, which is my one fault. I'm too easygoing. But the one sort of unspoken rule I have is I don't talk about Soulframe.
Right.
I only invite them to. For me, it's not my place. I would never be able to speak on it. Therefore, I can continue to just stay in the Warframe lane, and I can ask them questions about Soulframe. But if anyone ever asked me, if we were trying to book a press thing or something, like, oh, can you answer a couple Soulframe questions? I would say no. I just can't.
Sorry for making you answer Soulframe questions.
No, but I can answer questions you're asking, because you're asking questions about the team and how we're managing it, which I have an answer for.
Speaking of the team, what was it like? It's funny, right? Because you guys did work on other stuff in the interim, right? You had was it the Amazing Eternals? Was that
Yeah.
event that was officially cancelled?
It was many, many, many years ago. So that we were trying to do a 5v5 arena shooter that was like only PvP. A team was spun up for it, and I think after about 4 or 5 months, it just we just reassigned.
Oh, it was
all the
very
team.
short. It was
4 or 5 months of going live. I think it was in development for much longer.
Okay.
And then it went live, and then after 4 months ish, this is a rough approximation. It was we moved people back to Warframe.
So I'm guessing Soulframe then there were some people on the studio, especially folks who've been around for a while, I'm sure Steve included and some of the rest of them, but just across up and down the studio who are really excited to work on something new, probably?
Yeah, that is very fair to say. The initial docs and pitches for Soulframe did occur in the very end of 2021, where we released Warframe's biggest quest ever, the New War. That was sort of our Avengers Endgame. That came out in December 2021. And that was, for a lot of people, 10 years of working on Warframe. That signified that. So the second project was very quickly decided on and said, we need to start a second game. There's a creative case for it and there's a business case for it.
Right.
And a lot of people, I think, did request to be part of that initial incubation. You know, they've put in their time on Warframe for 10 years. I want to work on fantasy. I've always wanted to work on fantasy. So slowly the transitions have happened with, you know, the must-have parts of an incubation. Like you need art, sound, all those things. So a lot of people that were quite senior on Warframe did move over to start that and continue to work on it.
And that's probably good for Warframe too, because it shuffles that deck, right? You've got all, you know, junior positions. You then suddenly have a bit more responsibility. I mean, your case as well.
Exactly. That's like the only reason, you know, I moved, Megan gets promoted, Pablo gets promoted. It's very much the deck shuffling. And I don't think we hired anyone. I'm sorry if you're someone listening that we hired, but I think every position was just an internal promotion at that level. So be it the character art leadership, the art direction, the sound team lead, all of the people I work with one-to-one there were quite tenured. And then one thing we did do was hire more producers in this time just to support the way I work, which is a little different than the way Steve worked.
Has the studio grown much at all in sort of post-COVID?
It's kind of all over the place. We had the devastation of being a part of the layoffs for the people involved. We did close external publishing, which I never thought I can't speak on it because it's just not right. People's jobs, you know, DE can't be that way. And I'm very sad that it happened. But we have now, I think, over 500 people. And I think last time we talked during COVID, even 400, so probably 100-person growth in the past 2-3 years.
Okay, so not the type of crazy stuff we've seen in other places. Is there a lot of that remote, or?
A lot of it is remote, and Steve is CEO now, which is the other thing. So Steve is now the CEO of DE, and he is very much only hire what you need, which is where we have to be right now, I think, as far as avoiding the pitfalls of what has happened to people, like beloved people on the team. Remote is part of our culture now. You can be a fully remote hire. Hybrid is what I do. I'm home right now, but I could be at work. And then fully staffed, we have people that are full-time office. So it comes down to preference. But we do trend toward Canadian hires. I think just for there's like I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about this, but Ontario job postings are good for us for like a tax credit thing. So if you hire in Ontario and Ontario people, if you have some percent of Ontario employees, you get a good tax credit, which is good. And that's what we do.
When I worked at a radio station in the south of Ireland, we had to play a certain amount of Irish music.
We have the same laws. It's called CanCon here. What is your Canadian content laws? Yeah, it's a cultural thing. I'm not surprised you had to do that. Yeah.
The way they used to do it though is we had an Irish. I used to DJ the Irish music show. I used to fill in DJ where they would like, we haven't reached our quota. Here's 2 hours of Irish registered music on a weekend.
You get a lot of Ed Sheeran and only Ed Sheeran, I guess.
Oh God, is he? I don't know. He's English. I don't think he counts. It's only ones. He did Galway Girl. I mean, his parents are probably Irish. I don't know.
Oh my God, I thought it when I was in Galway. They were like, "This is where he busked. This is where Ed Sheeran busked." They were like pointing.
Irish. He's from
Oh,
Halifax. He probably did, but I don't know. His parents are probably.
I don't
mean, he looks
freaking
Irish.
know.
Look at him.
I
John
know.
and Imogen. They're from London. His father's Irish. There you go. His
Okay.
father's Irish. There we go. We'll take it. Look, that's the thing we do, right? When it's fucking Ed Sheeran, I don't want him, so I'm just going
I
to
know
say he's
you don't.
English. But then it's Michael Fassbender, and I'm like, yeah, he fucking grew up in
Is
Kerry.
he Irish?
Yeah, see,
I thought he was
this is me.
German.
I'm going to do it.
Is he German?
His dad is German, because, fucking Fassbender. But
Yeah,
his,
that's not Irish, my
his
friend.
mother's Irish, and he grew up in, like, Kerry in the southwest of Ireland, so... Yeah,
I'll take it.
he's Irish.
I know Fassbender has a lot of roles, but even though the movie's not very renowned, when he's the android in Prometheus and he's rewatching Lawrence of Arabia. And one thing when I was really early in my community coping and building thick skin, the way he touches his hair and he goes, the trick is not minding that it hurts. And that has been my philosophy for the past 11 years of my life is you put out the fire with your fingers, but then you say the trick is not minding that it hurts. And I say that way too often.
All right, this interview has very clearly drifted into the banter realm. I've known Rebb for a while now and I've always enjoyed her company, so this one was always going to be 80% talking about Warframe and 20% just catching up. But it happens that there is some overlap here. Warframe is a game that by its very nature has peaks and valleys in its player base. These usually correspond to when players finish new content or when a new game in the space captures their audience's attention. So given the fact that in 2024 it seems like fantastic new games just appear out of nowhere all the time, how has this affected Warframe's player base? It is becoming, I mean, you probably have this problem when you're trying to like reach out to people like me or the press to talk about a game that's been out for 11 years, but I think it is getting harder and harder to just play every game.
Yeah.
Recent months have been completely
I'm actually,
bananas.
I'm looking at my icons on my desktop right now because I put all my currently playing games in one quadrant of my monitor just so I can like...
Read them out. What we got?
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's kind of getting out of control because I have Final Fantasy 14 still, Helldivers 2, Tekken 8, the Thaumaturge, and then I have Slave Zero X as well. So, like, that's... And then Warframe, obviously, and Fortnite. So, like, it's not looking...
Is the Thaumaturge out or did you get an early version?
I got a key.
Oh, you lucky little... Yeah, the Thaumaturge. I feel like, I saw it at PAX West and I was like, oh my God, this looks fantastic. And then they explained its sort of its roots story-wise and culture-wise. And yeah, there's just so much shit, man. And then Pal World comes out and you got to play Pal. And then Balatro comes out and then I'm playing that for weeks on end nonstop.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I mean, if we were in the business of games and not like this side of things, what do you do, right? What do you do? How do you make a decision that will serve your team well? What do you make?
Everyone wants to make that 11-year game as well, right? They want to make the game that they can. But
how do they do it?
They don't have to go straight back into the creative wheelhouse immediately after putting it out there. How does that affect you guys though, in terms of like, how do you acquire new people to play Warframe? Because I can see why I relapse on WoW. I shouldn't say relapse, but I go back on WoW every time they do an update. Now I'm on the WoW Classic thing, so like every time they add a new WoW Classic thing, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna jump in for a while. And obviously those big beats sort of allow people to come back in. But where do you get new players from? Like, do you get those Fortnite kids who got bored? Do you get people who have never played Warframe, who are my age, who have known about it since their mid-20s? Where do they come from?
Everywhere. It's all of those things. It's I think this is the stupidest answer I could ever give, because if you were asking me, would you launch a new game or how do you launch updates? Like we're trying to do it again with Soulframe. So the industry slice we're in right now is like, would you launch a game of this nature right now? And the answer is, well, like, we are. So why do soul searching when we actually need to do decision making? Because Warframe needs to keep updating and keep its players interested, happy. That's a great, noble goal. But Soulframe also needs to enter alpha and beta, which is the earliest phase for a new game as service to launch. And you see the way people talk about game as service right now, like, oh God, why did they make it a live service? This, that.
It's true. There was a couple, right? There was Helldivers 2. There's, I guess, the finals as well.
Yeah, that's Embark Studios.
We're doing a bunch of docs in Sweden as well. So
Sweden right now, so hot right now.
I can tell you. I'll just tell you because this will probably be properly public by the time we're doing this. We are doing the big Cyberpunk 2077 doc. So we're interviewing, I think 10 people from CDP who are going to GDC.
Damn.
Then I'm going to Warsaw in about 3 weeks to interview another whatever amount of people. And then we do have to go to Boston at some stage as well to talk to them.
Yeah.
So
holy shit, that's fucking, I cannot wait for that.
Did you play much Cyberpunk? Because that's what they did. They did the fantasy to sci-fi thing.
They did.
Went the other way.
You're right. To be honest, I have it installed on 2 platforms. I have 2 different Vs made, and I've just been too busy with work. My best group of friends now that I have on Discord are like Phantom Liberty, ride or die. They tell me about it every day. And I'm like, I know, I'll get to it. But then I never do. Not that I don't want to. It's not a lack of, the body is willing, but the mind is weak. So I will do it. And I'll do it in a time that I'm not playing Elden Ring or Elden Ring DLC or.
I only mentioned all that CDP stuff because I know that you're a big Witcher fan as well. That was a place I often wondered, I wonder if Rebecca will go work for them. I'm not sure how your Polish is or whether you want to live in Warsaw.
Dzień dobry.
They have they have that Boston studio now though, I always wondered like if on a long enough timeline, but it sounds like the thing that obviously is keeping you around there and keeping you in the industry is obviously the folks you've worked with and how much you've invested into it. But you've been in it now for a long time, and it looks like, especially from your position, the whole way through, it seems like it's a fairly 24/7 responsibility.
Yeah, it's very complicated, and I'm sure there are professionals who always tell you to separate your work and your and I do, and I have very healthy boundaries, but ultimately I feel like I've done it and I'm doing it, and until this is pried away from my hands, which gosh, who knows when that'll happen, I'll go into fashion. I like fashion and things like that, or interior design, as we discussed. So.
Yes, exactly. I'd love it if you could make my office look like Gordon Freeman, then you get your cousin.
It's not that hard. It's really not. You just need to be able to see the vision. And ultimately, I'm trying to think of a non-depressing way of articulating this that doesn't make me feel like I'm not like a fatalist or anything.
Right.
I love it. I'll always play games. That's not, and I will continue to do this. Warframe has a very unique meaning to a lot of us on the team, a lot of players in the world. Being a part of it is fantastic. I celebrate it. I'm grateful. Continuing to do that with the team we have is just, it's the dream. So when I wake up, it won't be, I don't want to wake up yet. So I'll keep going.
You can catch up on all the latest Warframe and Soulframe news on each game's individual YouTube channels. Massive thanks to Rebb for taking the time out of her busy job to talk to me, to Jesse Garasha for producing this episode, and to you for listening. NoClip is free to watch and free to listen, and always has been. So if you'd like to support this show and all the work we do here at NoClip, we are always in need of new patrons. Head over to patreon.com/NoClip to see what extra goodies we can entice you with. Thanks for listening to this episode. See you next time.